Hi everyone, welcome back to Islam Unboxed. Today I will be talking about Islam and slavery, part 3. In part 1, I was talking about Islam and slavery during the time of Prophet Muhammad, when he was still alive. In part 2, I was talking about Islam and slavery after the death of Prophet Muhammad. And in this video, I want to talk about it after the rise of Turkey or Ottoman Empire. Turkey emerges in 11th century. In Turkey, slavery was legal, even though, even though they were Muslims. It's not because they were Muslim and then they did not have slaves. They still have slaves. And this more than 400 years after the death of Prophet Muhammad. In 17th and 18th century, actually 20% of the population in Turkey were slaves. It is reported that the price of slaves were down after wars. Because after wars, normally Turkey won and they brought home some more slaves. And the law of supply and demand were the same back then and until now, right? Always supply and demand, like the law. And in this video, actually, I don't really want to talk about Turkey that much, but I want to talk about Mauritania, a country in Africa. In 1905, French colonial administration put an end to slavery in Mauritania, but it did not stop. After they gained their independence, finally in 1981, Mauritanian government banned slavery, but it didn't stop. Why? I will tell you why. But first, I have to tell you this. In year 2007, under international pressure, Mauritanian government had to put the second ban on slavery. Because the first one didn't work out. It did not work out because Mauritanian government did not put a program to help the slaves. Slaves who had been slaves for people who had been slaves for 20 years, 30 years. Maybe they are now in their 50s. They don't know what to do. They don't have anywhere to go. Even though when they are free. After their newfound freedom, they still do not know what to do, where to go. Even though, so some slaves, actually, they prefer to be slaves because at least they eat. To help people getting out of slavery is impossible if we don't have a program for them. Mauritanian government should put a program like to help them, I don't know, with school, with free housing, or something like that, until they get into a regular labor force. Give them some training, any training, whatever they like, and then slavery can and will end. Well, not right away, of course, because sometimes it takes a while to convince people. Because if for people who are in slavery for a long time, they don't know. Sometimes they do, some of them they don't know better. They only know their life in that house with their master, so they don't know anything else, and they actually would prefer to stay. And I don't know if you remember actually in year 2019 also, I want to tell you before I forget, BBC reported people in Middle East selling and buying slaves by using Instagram. Imagine this. In year 2019. Remember, Prophet Muhammad was already dead. How many? Almost 1400 years ago. Now back to Mauritania. Also reported by BBC. In year 2017, after the 10 years after the second ban, they reported there were about 600,000 slaves. 600,000 slaves in Mauritania. Imagine, that's a big population. Reminds me of the Jewish people when they get out from Egypt. 600,000 men, plus women and children. So, anyway. And slavery is always bad no matter what. Because there's a Muslim told me, Daniel, Muslim tell you how to treat your slaves. And I know what he meant. He wanted to tell me that Islam tell Muslims to treat their slaves good. Now, I don't know about that. Because in Turkey, male slaves had to undergo castration. Because Turkish didn't want their male slaves to have sex with their female slaves. But then the Turkish had sex with the female slaves. Crazy, right? And also it was reported that many slaves committed suicide. And this is not even talking about most slaves died during the process of castration, Because I don't know how they did it in Turkey back then. So they forced them become a eunuch, right? So they cannot have sex. And the Turkish having sex with their female slaves, just like the Prophet. Prophet Muhammad had sex with his female slave, Maria, the Coptic, a slave from Egypt. So I hope these 3 videos I made on Islam and slavery explain and make you understand that Islam and Prophet Muhammad never put an end to slavery. Not then, not now, not ever. Not even treating them good. Because you have to know slaves are slaves. Maybe some slaves are luckier. I'm not saying all masters treating their slaves bad, but maybe some treating them, give them good treatment, giving them good food and little bit of money for their families. Maybe I'm just imagining here, because it's not impossible. Because some people are still good. I mean, maybe having slaves is the norm back then in some countries back then, but it still does not justify slavery, I know. Like one of my coworkers, actually, he's a Muslim, and he told me, having slaves is like uh, giving them a higher social status. I was like, that still doesn't justify slavery. If you want higher social status, then just buy a Lamborghini or something, something cool. Because usually people will see what you have, right? And of course, it is all worldly matter. I do understand. You don't need to have slaves. I mean, like, you can just pay them. If you are really rich, if you are paying them, actually, it's better. Instead of having free labor, 20 free laborers, I I pay them. If people know, actually, people will see me better. No, do you understand? Because instead of having them for free, I'm paying. So uh, sometimes when you're a Muslim, I'm not saying stupid or they're stupid, but they're like in that kind of mental frame, different mental frame, and I'm not blaming them for anything. It is understandable. They have to protect the religion. Uh, they have to protect their prophet. You know, so they try anything to justify everything that was bad in Islam. Well, that's all from me for today. Thank you for listening, and I hope, like I said, I hope my 3 videos about Islam and slavery will give you some understanding on Islam and slavery, of course. That Islam and Muhammad did not stop, did not put an end to slavery. And for those who are free, and for those who are slaves, God bless you all. Have a nice life.